What's up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on a fast-growing YouTube channel. That's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me from the KFC Yum Center in Louisville, Kentucky, it's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And, AJ, we're here following Carolina's 80-59 win over Louisville. Tar Heels improving to 12-6 on the year, 4-3 in ACC play. Louisville dropping to 2-16, 0-7 in the league. So just a dismal year for the Cardinals, to say the least. Continues. I'm going to run through some stats, AJ, and then we'll get into it. Armando Bacot, 14 points, 16 rebounds, led the way for the Tar Heels, double-double for him. Puff Johnson, 12 points, 6 boards. RJ Davis pitched in with 12 points, 5 assists. Caleb Love, 10 points. DeMarco Dunn in 25 minutes off the bench, 14 points, 5 rebounds. So pretty good performances all the way around from the Tar Heels, and obviously having 5 guys in double figures is always a positive. Let's start with Armando, though. I was just listening to his post-game interview. You can check it out on Tar Heel Illustrated, our YouTube channel, obviously. Basically said, last night, texted his mom, said, I didn't really expect to play. I hadn't really practiced this week, was in a boot yesterday, but was ready to go today, looked fine, looked really dominant at times as well. Really just looked like this, the Armando Bacot we've been used to seeing. And I think it's another positive as well that while he did play and looked fine, the way the scoreline worked out, he was able to come out for some big chunks in the game as well and not have to be relied on as heavily. So, just another big performance from Armando Bacot, and eerily reminiscent of 4 years ago almost in Charlottesville when he got hurt the following game, previous game against the Buckeyes. Questions were in the air and then played in that game, and obviously bad loss for the Tar Heels, but he looked fine, had a decent game. So he's a guy that just seems to rough it out and play through injury, man. It's pretty impressive to see.
There was interesting. I tweeted that I had seen him. I put some videos and stuff out there and photos for the game. And I put it on our boards that Armando looks good. He's going through all the stuff. You never would have known he had an injury, but of course that's just doing their stretching and their all the things they do before the game to get loosened up and all that kind of stuff. It's different, obviously, in a game. Pete couldn't do a lot of that stuff, so I knew right away he wasn't going to play. And it's probably going to be a while for him, and maybe it's best that they just shelve it for a while and let this thing heal. As for Armando, I went inside and I posted that, and then I talked to someone from Carolina. They told me that the plan is that Armando was going to start, and they were going to see how he felt. So I tweeted that out, and man, Twitter went nuts. People say, he's the most Tar Heel of all Tar Heels. He's a warrior. He's the toughest guy we've had since Tyler Hansbrough. And I told him that. And he's like, well, I don't know if I can be compared to him. But he likes carrying that mantle. He likes carrying that moniker of a tough guy because he's played through these things so many times before. He can probably write a book about playing through injuries and being really good afterward. And at first, Jacob, he never looked as crisp as he was before the ankle injury, especially with some of those spin moves early on. But he had a putback dunk. It was 15-7. Carolina looked terrible.
Yeah, they didn't start off great now.
They looked bad, and they looked discombobulated on both ends. Louisville was driving the ball right at him. I thought Hubert made a really good move putting DeMarco Dunn, who's got some good length, put him on L. Ellis, and that sort of shifted things some. But Armando gets a putback dunk, and then he gets a feed and a dunk in a 31-second span, 2 dunks. And that just changed everything. Excuse me. The Tar Heels' disposition changed. Armando was there. It's not, hey, he's here in body and spirit, but where's his game? Then everything was there. He started grabbing every rebound, that whole Pac-Man thing I've talked about before. I mean, he was just swallowing whole all the pellets out there. And the Heels just got a big-time skip in their step, and they went on a roll. What's interesting is there was a 17-4 roll. He got them going, but he wasn't part of extending it. I thought maybe the most fascinating stat about this game is that Armando scored to make it 22-16. He didn't score again until Carolina had 66 points. So other guys scored the next 44, but he had left his mark. He went out there, when he got him going with the dunks and he was getting the line, he was scoring, and he was grabbing every freaking rebound. I mean, you knew who the dude was in the building. And the people behind us were getting all on him early on about the injury, and they stopped. And they were quiet. after that. And they're loud here. This is a lot like NC State. When NC State's good and the fans are optimistic but bitter at the same time, that's kind of what Louisville fans are like. And they stopped getting on Armando because he was the guy. He was the dude in the building. If they were to line up everybody in the building today in accordance with who the biggest dude is, Armando would be at the front of the line. And everybody would have to follow. But what I thought was fascinating is how infectious it was. And I asked DeMarco about it being infectious, what he did, and he said absolutely. He's like, this guy was in a boot yesterday, wasn't practicing. He went to bed, didn't even know if he was going to play. Nobody knew if he was going to play, and there he is out there balling out. We've got to pick it up some. And they did. 17-4 run, closed the first half 30-11. And it wasn't it because they still had more work to do, but that was a very impressive stretch of basketball against a team that is not as bad as the record. They have parts, but they don't have a lot of parts. So when Carolina was able to shut down Ellis's drives, suddenly Louisville looked a lot messier on offense. So, but Carolina's mojo was all about Armando, and then he just kind of passed the baton to everybody else. And everybody else who played did something to keep the mojo going. I thought it was a really, really impressive performance. And if you ever need to know how infectious Armando could be, today is Exhibit A.
Yeah, no doubt. He's been a vocal leader for this team all year. And today, in a lot of ways, not really being a vocal leader, but just leading by example.
No, he was talking. I should have said this, too, because I took a note and I posted something in the game thread. There was a stretch in the first half where he specifically talked to 4 different teammates about them not being in the right place.
Wow. And
it was clear, succinct, Armando telling you weren't in the right place, and he got a nod. And the next time they were in that player, in fact, one of them was DeMarco, and he didn't run. I think he was supposed to cut in one of their sets, and he didn't cut. Next time they were in that, maybe it was the next possession, they were in that same set, he cut. And I think he may have gotten a shot on that possession. So Armando was a dude in every way out there today. And if you doubt his importance to this team, you saw him, we've seen it a lot, but I really think today, like, so much more of him helped this team win a game, not just because he was 14 and 16. Yeah, those are great numbers. Especially, but he didn't play for long stretches because he picked up the 4th foul. And after he picked up the 4th foul, they still pushed the lead. So I think that his effect on today's game is as significant as you can imagine, especially for a guy that wasn't like he was, Bryce Johnson at Florida State, 39-23, 14 and 16 is fantastic, but it wasn't like he had an incredible statistical night. His effect was incredible in so many other ways.
Yeah, 5 for 8 from the floor, only played 25 minutes as well. So that's positive all the way around for a guy like that. Let's move on to the bench a little bit. We'll talk about Puff and DeMarco because I thought they really produced today as well. And that's a really positive sign. I thought it was one of the better games we've seen, especially from Puff this season. And I think DeMarco continues to impress a lot of ways. Had he's had some good performances this year. Obviously had some quiet games, but he's getting the reps and getting the time to go out there and do things now, playing, like I mentioned earlier, 25 minutes tonight, most out of any guy on the bench. Jalen Washington just behind him with 19 minutes, but that's a big positive. Puff's a big positive. They can continue to get these guys that aren't the starters kind of coming off the bench and producing on both ends of the court like these 2 guys did tonight. I think that's a really big positive. I know it's Louisville. It's a team that's really struggling this year. You want to see them do it against better opponents as well. But again, they stepped up when they needed to tonight, produced some big time points and big time minutes. And, was it 26 combined points and let's see, 11 combined rebounds for the 2 guys. So if you can get that off your bench from just 2 guys every night, you're sitting in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, I know what Louisville is. I know who they've lost to. I think they're a lot better team now than when they were losing here to Bellarmine and
there's just some kind of disconnect because it just felt like today they just kind of stopped playing in some second half.
The confidence is an issue, and Carolina had to take that from them.
Yeah.
So you have to credit Carolina for doing that. But I'm running the baseline for this game, and Louisville's got athletes. They got dudes at Carolina. Carolina recruited Roosevelt Wheeler. Ellis is a really good player. James is a guy that's going to be pretty good. They've got some dudes. Okay, Curry is a big body. I mean, that was a test when he was out there because he's going to throw it around. Not super skilled, but they're not. It's not like playing a team from the America, whatever it is, the
American
East
Conference or something like that.
They've got America East. They've got athletes. They're just not super skilled and they're not confident right now. And after driving the ball, when that was stopped early, they had no plan afterward. So they've got a lot of issues they have to deal with here. But I think for the guys that you mentioned to step in and produce when they did, DeMarco had that stretch in the first half that was huge. In the second half, they cut it to 6. It was 11 at the half. Louisville scored the first 5 points of the second half. Curry had one of the buckets. They cut it to 6, and Carolina's next 12 points were by Puff Johnson and DeMarco Dunn. So it's not just, they did it against Louisville, but when they did it and the manner they did it. And there was a lot of stuff that came to them through the offense. Puff was asked after the game about the last 4 games. He had 0, 11, 0, and 12 in scoring. And he was very clear. Said, look, what I bring to the table doesn't have to be measured in points. But I asked him, I said, okay, so do the points reflect opportunity? Like scoring situations? Does it reflect circumstances of the game? And he kind of agreed with that. For example, Carolina had a lot of success with some mid penetration and kickouts. Caleb was really good at that today. People dog Caleb, but he found DeMarco for a wide open 3 in the corner, found a few other guys. They found the kickouts and stuff. And so many of Puff's shots and DeMarco's shots were through that. So Carolina did stuff to draw defense and to leave them open, so they were able to create shots for those guys. And sometimes those shots aren't always there. Sometimes they play teams that are better defensively, whatever the case is. But what you like is, if you look at Puff's scoring games where he's at 0, he's not taking a lot. He's not going over 6. He's just not getting shots. Here, he got shots. He knocked them down. He had a couple really impressive ones. He had a wonderful cut where he got a bucket. I think Armando fed him. And DeMarco, we're starting to see like DeMarco punch through the bag, if you will, and all the different parts of his game are starting to it's like he's being hatched as a basketball player. And we're seeing all these parts of his games come out, and you're like, wow. And he got extended time tonight. And what happened was the whole of his game was on display for quite a while. The first thing I noticed was when Hubert put him on Ellis, which I thought was an interesting move, but the length, he's longer. I think his arms are longer than Seth's, and maybe he's physically a little bit stronger, a little bit older player. I don't know. Seth had some trouble with him a little bit early. Put DeMarco on him, and all those drives stopped. I think Ellis had 11 points in the first 6 or 7 minutes of the game. I don't know what he finished with, but he only scored a few more times the rest of the way, and he was forcing a lot of stuff. But it wasn't just that. DeMarco was scoring in a variety of ways. And the rebounds. I asked him after the game what his vertical leap is. He doesn't know. So I said, you need to find out. Next time I talk to you, I want to know what your vertical leap is. Because he got over everybody in the basket right here, which was down by Louisville's bench. He got over everybody and grabbed the rebound. I mean, his top of his hand was above the square on the backboard. And it was the motor. Hubert talked about his motor after the game. Said, look, he could get the gear 5, but his problem is he doesn't stay in gear 5. Today he was in gear 5, and a couple of those rebounds that he got over everybody on the break, his defense, he got a 50-50 ball at one point where he was clearly the hardest working guy in the building in that sequence. So the motor was there, and we saw a dude who had a career high in rebounds. I don't know what he finished with, 5 or 6.
5 rebounds.
Yeah, he had a couple steals. He was just very active. There was a well-roundedness to his game. So the moniker that, well, they need a shooter out there, so put DeMarco out there. DeMarco's going to be a lot more than that. He showed today he's a lot more than that. And so did Puff. I thought Puff had a couple of really tough rebounds in this game. People sometimes question his physicality, but I don't think physicality was an issue for him because a couple of the shots he got off, a couple that he created for himself, he had to deal with thicker guys, and he got the shots off over them. So love the fact that those guys are able to produce when the opportunity's there. Puff got the start because Louisville's kind of a long team. And then Hubert went into the 4-guard thing for a while, then went big with Armando and Jalen on the court, and Puff was at 3. So he tried a lot of things, but I think a real positive, and I'll conclude your question here with this, is that Hubert knows he's got all these unique parts. The bench isn't a cookie cutter bench. Everything's kind of different. And because of that, he could go from throwing a 4-guard lineup out there with Dunn, Trimble, RJ, and Caleb to transitioning immediately into having Armando, Jalen, and then Puff at the 3 out there. I think that these are all things that are happening now that are really going to show out later in the year because these guys have performed when they've gotten these extended. Dontrez played the last 5.5 minutes of the first half. He filled the lane beautifully on a dunk, which was feed from DeMarco in the fast break. There was a little ruggedness he brings out there and some hops. So that had to help his confidence too. I don't think the bench is that much of an issue. Hubert is showing a willingness to use the bench when he needs to use it. And he's also showing a willingness to change, to shift gears in the middle of things and throw a different look at somebody. We saw that today. And Puff and DeMarco are very different players, but they could do a lot of the same things, but they do them from different spots. And that's a real valuable, those are valuable weapons to have. And they came through big time today.
Yeah, they did that. No doubt about it. A lot of parts. And, when they're producing like that, it's a fun bench to watch because there's a lot of different guys over there that can do some different things. So long may that continue from a Carolina perspective. Last thing we want to talk about, AJ, let's talk about, we talked about this after the Notre Dame game. One of our big, thing we tweeted during the game of that one was, hey, Carolina has the lead now. Can they kind of put their foot on the neck of Notre Dame, for lack of a better word, and pull away a little bit? And they did that in some respects. And I thought, again, tonight they did that. And I think that's once again a sign of growth, being able to, have a lead, but push the lead and make it to a point where over the last few minutes, it was over. It was over for a long time. So credit to Carolina from doing that. So building off of that, I think that's a huge positive and what this means looking ahead. Obviously, Boston College coming up at home this week on Tuesday. So another big game, another very winnable game as well. And if Carolina can get some bench production, get Armando Bacot, playing again, which, fully expected today with how he looked out there, I think it's a real big positive, and I think today's a big positive win and one they can build on. But like I said, kind of hit on those both things because I thought being able to push that lead and kind of just push Louisville aside like they did again is a really positive side moving in to the rest of the season.
Yeah, I wrote the putting foot on throat column after Notre Dame because it was apropos at the time, and I have not written my column yet. I may go in that direction a little bit again, simply because Hubert's halftime message. Mm-hmm. He talked to them about growth. He used the word growth. When you watch the kids' interviews afterwards, they talked about growth. Coach said, we have to show growth. So they're up 11, show growth. Put them out of their misery. Let's move on and get this win. And they had 2 opportunities in the second half to do that when it was cut to 6, like I mentioned a few minutes ago. And then it was cut to 13. I think it was 56-43, about, 12 and a half, 13 minutes left. And if you've ever been here, this place can get loud. Mm-hmm. And they will their team on. This is a fan base that is very proud. They have a lot of tremendous history here. The banners up there are impressive. They're a second tier, fabled program with Carolina, Kansas types, Kentucky's being in the first tier. And they know what they're looking at. And I found it interesting today that they weren't overly negative at all. They were actually very positive trying to employ the team. And when they cut it to 13, Carolina had sort of an ugly look there for a couple of minutes, and the fans were in it. You would never have known that this was 2-win Louisville playing Carolina. It seemed like all the other times I've been here when the Tar Heels are here. And Carolina quickly responded. They pushed it to 21 in a matter of about 4 minutes, and then they cruised from that point on. So they were faced with a couple of those situations, and they did it. They had several runs throughout the course of the game. The one that got it going, that was 17-4, and then the Puff DeMarco spurt once they cut it to 6, and then Louisville got back in a little bit, and then Carolina went on a big run where they were really aggressive and they played at a very, very high level in that stretch. So Hubert said, let's grow in the second half. Let's show growth. And they did that. So I'm not going to sit here and say that it wasn't growth. So I'm going to use the G word, growth. I'm going to say that they did grow. And what this means is that this club has accumulated a series of games where they're scoring a high volume of points off of opponents' turnovers. They're averaging 1.7 points off opponents' turnovers in the last 4 games. They're getting back to who they've been before on the black backboards. They are winning, and they've won 3 out of 4 here in this stretch with Caleb just not hitting, but they're getting production from other guys. There's someone on that bench Tuesday night against Boston College that will start the game on the bench, that may step up and go for 10 or 12 with a few rebounds and a couple of assists and a steal or two and give him quality minutes. That wasn't the case a year ago. There was a giant question mark over there. So we've seen a lot of stuff move forward. At some point, Pete will come back and he'll be an added piece. But right now, as they are making progress. So what this means is exactly what Hubert asked them to do, and they did it, which wasn't always the case this year. And they got a lot of stuff from a lot of guys, so they should feel very good about things. They'll have a little bit of a challenge from BC because they're feisty, and then they got NC State next week. That's at home, I believe, right? Yeah, that's at home. So and State's a good team. Mm-hmm. They're the best team in the league based on what preseason predictions were. Probably they were very, very low in the preseason predictions, and they're, I don't want to say overachieving because I don't believe in that term, but they are performing above expectation probably more than anybody else. So they'll bring a lot of what Louisville brought at them, but with more guys who are better. Mm-hmm. So this was a good win for this team, and it's their first true road win, by the way. 1-4.
Pretty wild to think, but yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. AJ, big win, tougher test, definitely a weight, but you got to win games like this on the road, especially. It doesn't matter what the team's, record is or anything like that. You got to go in here and take care of business. And again, I thought Carolina did that in a pretty professional manner, particularly with how they played in the second half. So we'll go ahead and wrap this one up from the KFC Yum Center in Louisville, Kentucky. I know you got plenty of stuff to do. It's 6:10 already, AJ. The game started at 2 p.m. I mean, I know post-game took 5 times longer than it usually does, so that doesn't help either. I know you got plenty of work.
It was like a football post-game.
Yeah, it was football.
10 p.m. is my goal.
I think that's doable. That's doable.
I think it's doable.
I think you probably got a little writing done during the game, I would think, too, right?
A little bit, yeah, like more placement of where I want stuff. So the writing will still happen, and then Brandon P, the esteemed Brandon P, is transcribing Armando for me.
That's the best, man. To get somebody on the transcript.
Kudos to him for coming through, and happy birthday to Carly, by the way.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that.
Everybody give shout out, happy birthday to Carly today. That's Jacob's soon to be significant other.
Yeah, not far, man. May 6th, so we're not too far away. I appreciate that. I actually got a dinner rereservation I got to make in the next hour, so I'm on a little bit of a time crunch. But
AJ's causing issues for that because I won't shut up. I don't stop talking.
Nah, man, you weren't the issue tonight. Was unfortunately the football post game interview link. That's what really killed it tonight. But what you gonna do, man?
It was Luke Combs. It was his fault.
Yeah. Hey, man, Luke Combs, App State guy, too, as well. Matt obviously went to App State, so I got a lot of love for you, Luke Combs, especially with, he likes Carolina, obviously, too. So big respect to Luke Combs, but he did put me in a little bit of a tight situation today, time-wise. So I'm sure he'll be thinking about that over his way. But, AJ, I'm going to let you run, man, because I got to go, too, to be honest with you. So I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another episode of our Three Things post-game podcast. We appreciate you watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Keep it locked to TarHillIllustrated.com for all your post-game coverage as well. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.